Well, Mark, thank you for sitting down and speaking with me.
No problem.
I might give you a little bit of background on what this is.
Absolutely.
And then we can get into the conversation. So when I first came over to the UK, I started a dinner series, which you've yet to attend.
I've been invited to.
You've been invited to.
But not made one yet, but I will do.
We'll get there. This is an extension of that dinner series. The main goal of this is to share stories. I'm hoping that other listed leaders that watch this and watch all of these videos and podcasts we're bringing together will hopefully get something out of the stories that they hear from their peers, which is an audience that they might not get to hear from as frequently as would be helpful.
And speaking as honestly as we can, basically.
As honestly as we can.
This is like teaching your kids to do stuff when they hopefully they listen to you, but probably they won't, and they go off and make their own mistakes.
Well, honestly as you can, we don't edit these. And so every one of these I've done so far has been one rolling conversation. Candid conversation. And so we're not editing it. Mm-hmm. So it will be very candid. Okay, so maybe for people that are listening who don't know you as well as I do, would you be able to give a brief introduction yourself, your role, a little bit about your journey as a public leader?
Sure. So I'm the CEO of ValiRx. ValiRx is AIM listed. ValiRx as a company has been around since 2006. I was originally involved with the company back in 2008 to 2010, helping with the preclinical development of one of the assets. I got invited back to help out on the business development and marketing side and the kind of some on the technology as well from my predecessor. And through a series of events, I ultimately ended up becoming CEO in August last year. So in between that, I was involved in a management buyout of some of the biomarker technology that we developed, that we had in-house, that we sourced and brought into ValiRx. It was basically parked, it wasn't being developed. We brought in some investors, and a couple of us from ValiRx set up a company called Volition, and we set that up, and we went away, and basically I've been working on that since 2010 to about 2023. Got that up to about $250 million valuation, listed in the US, big journey. And then it got to a size where it was beyond where I felt I was adding significant value anymore, and I wanted to come back to smaller companies, which is where I'm more used to and more comfortable with. And I had the opportunity to come back in. But as I said, I got basically involved to help out, and then ultimately ended up taking over as CEO. Which wasn't the plan, but I've been heavily invested in the company for a long time, so I know we'll probably touch on this, but we've got some long-term shareholders feeling some pain. I also was part of that process, so hopefully I can relate to that, and part of the journey has been basically trying to reverse some of the trends in the past.
And how would you, I haven't asked anyone this question before, it's just occurred to me, but that journey since August last year, how would you describe it in one word?
Brutal. No, and to be fair, as I said, it wasn't what I was expecting to do, but and I've historically kind of kept myself just below the senior level, where the head above the parapet sort of thing. So the head is very much above the parapet now, and that's something that I didn't necessarily expect to enjoy, but as a process, I found it very interesting. It's part of my personal journey to get involved in this. I think I'm doing okay. Talking to the people that we've got in the company, and the feedback that I'm getting at the moment is positive generally, and we're pretty open with each other. It's a small team. We went through a period of consolidation, restructuring to get the team working optimally, I would say. So I know some people dispute it, but we have a very lean team now, 9 people across multiple companies. People forget that ValiRx as a company is the AIM listed piece, the parent company, but we've got multiple companies below that, special purpose vehicles, joint ventures and the like. Each of those have their own boards, each of those have their own responsibilities. So it's it looks relatively complex as a hierarchy, but it's set up specifically around how we can monetize assets going forward and be the most efficient as we move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should give yourself a bit more credit. I've never come across a public leader that has been as considered and deliberate about spending, even very small spending decisions. So I think you should give yourself some credit.
I think that was the key thing when I came in, and part of it was to look at what we had, look at the potential that we had, the unmet potential, I would say, and how we can best get there. And efficiency was a key thing. So, saving money is obviously important, or spending it in the best way, I would say, is important. But the key thing for me was making our company as efficient as possible.
Well, that's it, because efficiency is not just about changing the inputs, but also the outputs.
Exactly.
If you spend the same amount of money but get more out of it, you're still more efficient.
Absolutely. So it's about redistributing where the money goes. I put in a big chunk of my own money. Well, all of my own money, I would say. All of everything that I had. I could have paid off my house in December last year, but I put it into the company, and not sweat equity, actual cash that went into the company. And I was, at that time, and even before that, I had my pension tied up and everything, and my partner's pension as well. So he was trusting me with that money. But it was about, where would I spend that money? What do I want to see that money being spent on? And ultimately, it's about what that money will deliver. So how can we best use my money, shareholders' money, everybody's money, to progress and grow the company?
The owner mindset.
Yeah.
So let's zoom in on position as a public leader. Rapid fire a couple of questions. So one, in your time as a public leader, maybe we can look specifically your time as a public leader with ValiRx. What is the best piece of advice that you've received?
Don't hesitate.
Can you expand on that?
Hesitate will kill you. So basically, indecision, and I've seen this historically, indecision and decision paralysis is what costs time, and time is money, basically, especially with the short horizons that we operate to. So you've got to be able to make rapid decisions, and those decisions may be wrong, but ultimately, obviously you don't want to make wrong decisions. But making no decision is the worst decision.
Yeah.
So you've got to make rapid decisions, and honestly, it comes down to having, the ability to project and see where you want to be and think how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And if you can see that, and that's one of the things that I think I can do. I do feel that I can see, where we're going to be in 2 years, 5 years time, and how the best way to get to that position is. And once you've got that, commit and go with it quickly. Make those decisions and kind of move on. Another, everybody in the team then wants to see a decisive, fair and rational kind of decisions, but they need to be decisive. And I did feel, self-critique that I took too long to make some of the initial decisions within 3 months. And when I'm talking about too long, I'm talking like 2 months instead of 1 month, or 2 weeks. So that was the time frame that we were operating under when I first started ahead of Christmas.
Do you think part of this is, and this has come up before in other interviews, where because as a public leader versus running a private company, there is continuous judgment in that you've got the market, which is judging you every second of the trading day. You've got a board, you've got advisors, you've got all these sources of opinions.
Critique.
It's
like being on stage, right? It's the difference between making a film and performing live on stage.
And that can lead to, you're like, oh my God, I'm so much more exposed. Therefore, I'm going to try and make sure I don't misstep. But you're actually more likely to misstep if you overthink it, sort of thing.
Absolutely. Overthinking it is the worst thing. So I think gut instinct, it really for me is always...
That's why you're in that position, because you've got good gut instinct.
Well, yeah. And that's been, as I said, it wasn't a deliberate choice to get there, but and I've kind of maybe avoided that level of commitment in the past because I didn't necessarily want it. I was very happy doing what I was doing, very flexible in kind of my own consultancy work that I've been doing, for example. But now, but I think having all of that really diverse experience across multiple countries, across multiple industries, and seeing, the things that work, the things that don't work, then it's like, okay, I know that's not going to work, I know that's going to work, and it might be painful to do it in the short term, but it's going to make a difference.
Well, let's flip it then. What about in your capacity, CEO of ValiRx, PLC level, what's the worst bit of advice you've been given?
It's better than nothing.
What do you mean by that?
So some of the decisions we were making around specific positions within the company that I felt, everybody agreed actually that we needed to change those positions. And some of the sentiment, from was around, it's better than nothing. Let's not rush into it. It's better than nothing, and it's not better than nothing. It's absolutely not better than nothing.
Well, that's an example of an indecision. Though.
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, that was an indecision. Yeah. So, and it had downstream effects, and this comes to the 1 month, 2 month, 3 month kind of window.
Right.
You wait 2 months, and then it's like, okay, fine, and you think, okay, well, we need to replace. a set of positions with something that's going to be more functional for the company. So we need to recruit for those other positions. We need to understand what it is we want. And it's like, I've not done recruitment before, but actually, at the end, and I was very uncertain, let's say, to be forgiving, on the use of headhunters. They've got the cost, they've got the whatever. If you look on, the narrative that you get from headhunters, you save more money, you save more time by using all that. But if you get the wrong one, then you don't, obviously, and it's that can be a problem. But actually, we met a really great team from a newly formed division within a slightly larger company focused on life science. They came up, they spent the time with me specifically to understand what I wanted, what the company wanted, how I worked. And what we wanted to do was to bring in new people, the right new people with the right kind of positions, but it still was going to be a much smaller team, so they had to fit and everybody had to get on. So we were very, I thought we were very fussy about what we were looking for, and in fact they nailed it basically. So, and the person that we got has really transformed the way we work going forward.
So, something else I've been asking people, if we think about the skills that you need, not just as a CEO, but specifically running a public company, I think the world is changing very quickly. In fact, I think that's pretty obvious in terms of how things are changing technologically, socially, politically, economically, whatever. That would naturally suggest that in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, the skills that will be essential to running a public company will be very different. What is a skill that might not be at the forefront of the repertoire now, but you think will need to be at the forefront of the repertoire of a public leader in 5 or 10 years?
I think the key thing for me is personality and ability to communicate with people, right? Generally. Yeah. So, that can be communication with customers, it can be communication with people that we want to license stuff from, it can be communication with shareholders, all of that sort of thing. And if you don't come across with the belief and the passion that you honestly, you're fully committed and that you actually, you're going to make a success of the company, then why should anybody believe that? And I think that's fundamentally maybe where again, I'm quite naturally outgoing and kind of, I feel that that's one of the things that from the feedback that I've received, that actually, people do, I can engage with people.
Well, I can see you being humble here, so I'm going to jump in and speak for you, which is, and this is something I want to talk about anyway, communication, great point. If you're a public leader, whether you like it or not, you are a public figure.
Yeah.
And where I've seen a lot of public companies go wrong is when they try hide. And they hide maybe because they're not confident, maybe because they don't want to face the music, or maybe because they think it's beneath them, I don't know. But you don't really have a choice. And the companies that lean into it like you're doing, I think do very well. For example, coming into the period where you joined the business, it was tough for ValiRx.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of, won't mince words, angry individual shareholders.
Angry, dissatisfied, which then ultimately led to anger, which is ultimately why I ended up becoming CEO. Yeah.
And I think that has changed to some extent, and I think a big part of it is because they like you. And I think they like you because, one, you are an owner in the business.
Yeah, that was a key thing. Yeah.
Two, if I look at how you, and I encourage everyone to do the same, if you look at how you present on LinkedIn, you're very authentic, you take candid photos of yourself at events, you really put yourself out there. It is possible for people to have a parasocial relationship with you. They know you. And so the face of their money, the face of the risk they're taking with any early stage business is more of a known versus a company or a leader that doesn't lean into it. And so I think your authenticity when you communicate has been a big part of it. Is that something you've done deliberately? It's just you.
No, I think it's me. I think, like you said, it's authenticity, right? I'm not putting on a face. I'm not. It's not an act. It's me. You get me. That's it. And I've never been good at anything than that. And when I'm upset, you'll know I'm upset. And in the past, that's bitten me for sure. I'm very from the north, right? So I've got a very direct way of speaking to people usually. And I don't suffer fools. And ultimately, I can be completely frank. I've got a massive self-interest in making this company successful because I've got so much money tied up in it. But that aligns very well with everybody else, and just the vision and be able to, to drive that forward. But I'm very impatient, which again is helpful in terms of where we are now, in terms of what we want to achieve going forward. But also creative. You've got to be creative and look for opportunities. It's things that it's a tough market everywhere, but it's always been tough. Wherever I've been working, it's always been tough. There's never been, it's not easy. And I don't think, most people will see that. It's not easy. So it's about navigating through that and finding creative ways to move forward, I think.
So when I first met you, you were at the start of this journey and you were about to do a couple of things. One, you wanted to reinvigorate your existing retail shareholder base.
Yep.
Two, you wanted to internalize most of your market-facing functions. So
Yep.
II was one of them. A lot of things you were internalizing. And then three, you ultimately, business continues to need capital. You wanted to prepare for an eventual capital raising.
Yep.
Maybe if we break those down, let's talk about the first one. You had a goal where you said, I really want to get in, I want to get stuck in and bring our existing retail shareholder base on side. How were you thinking about doing that? What was your, because there are clear indicators to suggest that that's worked. So how were you thinking about that?
So I think engagement is a key thing, and being open and talking to people. So, I think what we've done with you guys has been really helpful, being able to communicate directly. I would say that we have a retail base for sure, right? So the vast majority of our existing shareholders are non-sophisticated, and that's not meant to be, an insult. It's just that they're non-technical. We do now have 3 key shareholders that own nearly over 20% of the company. Between myself, we've got another broker, but he's also owns biotech business, so he's a strong long-term holder, and a third guy came in. And I'm assuming that they've seen the communication, because nobody's ever come in and bought 8% of the company in a chunk before. I mean, that's just, there's an opportunity obviously at this low valuation, but I think the fact that somebody actually wanted to do that suggests that, the messaging at least is being received and right. We've got a lot of long-term historic shareholders who, been through a series of fundraisers and dilutions, but the people who bought in because they believe, they've got family members who've got cancer or whatever, they largely are still supportive. We've got other people who want to trade the shares, and they do things. And
your strategy there was more communication?
It's more so supporting the people, trying to underline to the fact that we do have a strong future. We've got opportunities going forward to build back to where we can be. And we've seen it in the past, though. Historically, the company has come back from events 2 lots of management ago. There was a really strong surge, and then just various things didn't quite work out to support that kind of continuation. So I think what I'm looking to do now is to try and build a company that can continue, the rise, rather than just keep going through these spikes and get us off the bottom. And I think hopefully people see that. And it's about regular communication and putting out just regular news flow. So I know there's been critique in the past about some of the just keeping people up to date in terms of the strategy and what's going on. And I think that's part of it. If people understand what you're trying to achieve, and you can explain it in a way that makes sense, so the partnerships that we've built up, we've taken back all of our BD activities. So, we don't have internal BD anymore. Again, people say that we have business development manager. We do not have business development manager. There is no business development manager within the company. And that was part of the significant, savings that we made in terms of cash flow. But the partnerships that we've built up around that, and that's why I'm keen on communicating those partnerships and getting people to understand it's about a capability build. It's about leveraging the business development activities from other companies that we can then move on together, and just tweaking the strategy that
I think that's a really good point about keeping people up to date, and something we talked about. That it doesn't just mean RNS announcements, and that the tools available to a public company to keep people up to date. People often say, "Oh well, I can only put out RNSs." No, you can't, and you're a great example of that. You can post a picture of yourself at a conference, so people say, "Oh well, Mark's out there and he's finding new partners," or you can post a video or an explainer on how this partnerships work. Like there is a lot more you can do. News flow doesn't just mean RNS.
It's understanding the process, I would say, largely. So RNSs are really dry, right? You send them to your Nomad, they basically strip out anything exciting and kind of thing. Absolutely sanitized. So you need to get across the rationale behind those. There's a statement at the bottom where you've got a little more latitude. But I think the ability then to put out the video clips that you can just kind of rationalize that and say, look, this is part of a bigger bigger strategy. This is part of our kind of capability, development. It's about building out the network that we've got that we can work with. But then, like you said, the conferencing, going to a conference like ASCO, the American Association, the Association of Clinical Oncology, or Bio, that's not a jolly. That's a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
So, you're looking at 40, 50 meetings, something like that, over 3 days. You fly into America, you literally get in one day, you're at 8 o'clock in the morning, all the way through. There's loads of networking in the evening. Hey, great networking. We can all go out and have a beer. But you're working, right? It's a social environment, but it's supposed to be a more relaxed environment where you can actually encounter people less formally than you would necessarily reach out on partnering networks to say, I want a formal meeting with a guy from XYZ Pharma, and they'll be like, well, no, we're not ready to talk to you yet. But if you bump into somebody, in a networking environment, you can have an informal conversation, find out what they're thinking, find out when the time is to go to them and ask them, would you take a formal meeting with me at the next bio if we've got this data, whatever. So, it's really important to do that and to be seen there. You can't do that at home on Teams. You can't set up 50 meetings in a week or 4 days, whatever, on Teams just by ringing around people. It just doesn't happen. Everybody's in that environment to do the same thing, right? They want to meet people. So it's really critical, I think, to communicate that both to the people that are going out there, so showing what's happening. So you meet people in ASCO, you meet people in Bio, you meet people in the next Bio. So you're building that kind of, communication cycle with investors, with clients, with customers, hopefully going forward. But then also, then people can see, and some of the shareholders get it, but not everybody. It's like, oh, Mark's off in Chicago on a jolly, and it's like, no, I'm not. My family's at home. My dog's at home. I'd rather be, all things being equal, happy at home doing that. But somebody's got to get out there and do the job. It's one person. It's really condensed, getting that work done. Critical part of the job.
That makes a lot of sense. So look, first thing was getting in contact with retail, going direct with them, and trying to bring them back on the journey. The second thing that I remember us talking about when I first met you was you were internalizing a lot of the market-facing functions, and specifically looking at IR and market engagement and how you were thinking about that. What was your rationale? Why were you doing that?
Well, honestly, I think the best person to talk about what we do is us, right? Or, and as I said, it goes back to the communication thing. I think hopefully I can communicate quite well and articulate to people, what we're doing. And it's, it's about the best use of resources going forward ultimately. Yeah. So it'd be great if we had loads of people going out there. So, but we don't have the resource to be able to do that. So we focus our resource and we use our internal capabilities where we can to communicate what we're doing at the moment. At the stage we're at, I think it's the right thing to do, to have that kind of, very focused internal. It's a very clear message. It's about rebuilding. It's not about, it's not about basically trying to sell a big happy story. It's about reality. And, I think hopefully I can get that across and show this kind of transition from where we were to where we are. And it's that, I think if you try and hide from that, then people aren't going to see that, it's what is maybe the thing that I've got. And if I let somebody else go out and talk about it, then nobody's going to see that.
I agree. And I the only thing I'd add to that is I'd say I don't think it is just the case when you're at this size. As you get bigger and theoretically say have more resource, I think it would still make more sense to have someone internal, but it might not be you. It might be someone else internal who lives and breathes the business every day.
Exactly.
And gets it.
And I've been really keen on basically everybody within the company being able to get out to technical meetings, to collaborations. So we've got our lead scientist, Amelia. She's really good at interacting now with academic groups, basically. So we've got our collaboration with King's College, for example.
That would be interesting.
So we do small features on. They're quite shy, right? They're lab people, so they are quite shy. It's amazing actually how much they've come out of their skin. And part of what I'm doing here is about, hey, this is what we could all do. We can move forward. So it's not about me ultimately, right? It's about the company. But I think getting once I'm trying to train or at least convince the rest of my team that everybody should be out there. So we've seen things. They interact with universities, they interact with other companies. They're doing the pitches now. They're doing the customer meetings.
Probably learn a lot doing that as well.
So it's confidence ultimately, right? And the more you do it, the better you get. It's or at least the less nervous you get.
Yeah.
So if we're talking to a customer now, I don't do the kind of the slide deck and the pitch and stuff like that. Yeah. So it'll either be Mel, our head of scientific operations, and she'll do a pitch, and she did one the other day. Great job. I'm biting my tongue not to kind of step in and say things because I know she's going to say it, and then but we try to get a good dynamic going. And then the same with Michelle. She's the same way. So she does more on the scientific side with on the collaboration side. She's the one who presents that. And we had a customer meeting the other day where we were presenting data. She went all the way through that. I think I said like hello and 2 or 3 words right at the end. Complete confidence in their ability to do that. Amelia's doing that now, so she started to do some small podcasts and things like that, and she's doing all the LinkedIn stuff out there. So everybody and people need to see, right, what it's like. We've got a lab and there's 3 people in there. They're all getting paid this money, and that's all. And where's that money going? It's like, well, they're going down to King's College. They're going to here. They're doing all of this. So I think it just people will see what people are doing there.
So bring it internal because. Well, I guess you could frame that as if you want to do something right.
We've all got the passion for it.
And you've got the passion.
Yeah.
And then the third part, and I might frame this slightly differently, raising money on AIM is tough at the moment, particularly if you have had a challenging past and there is a rewriting of the narrative that you have to counter as well. For other AIM leaders in a similar space to you that might be listening to this, you've raised money in the last 12 months. What would you say they should definitely do, and what would you say they should be wary of if as they're approaching that process?
So definitely, I think again it comes back to transparency, right? So it's the first time I've done this. I had good advice, and the people that we spoke to and the brokers were really supportive, and we went through the whole kind of thing. Just the process of writing the deck, getting that validated by every single statement had to be read by a solicitor and a lawyer and basically approved right before we could go out there, stay on script. So you can't stray away from that. So that was an interesting process. But ultimately, it's about believing what you're saying. No BS. It's an honest story. It's a transition from where we were, what we were doing. Part of that change of message that this is what we want to do. It was a very clear story about where we wanted to spend the money, very clear objective of what we were going to do, where we're going to go next. So I think that narrative was fine. It's a difficult environment, but it's now I've never been out of a difficult environment ultimately. So I think it's all, and it should be difficult, right? It shouldn't be that easy to raise money. I have been in situations where certain companies that I've been involved in have found it very easy to raise money. And then you do start to get a bit complacent about, well, it doesn't matter because we can just get more money and it'll be fine, blah, blah, blah. So, and I think that's the wrong attitude. Every I know where the money came from my bank account, some of it, right? So, I think everybody has to feel the same way about that and be conscious of where that money's coming from.
Do you feel like the investor conversations that eventually led to money in the bank, how much of that were you having to drive?
In terms of the narrative, or
in terms of getting it across the line? Because I think what I'm trying to get across here is for CEO approaching this, how much work should they expect to put in? Is it going to be broker will go and find all the money, or you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and get it done?
So we had a lot of meetings. Yeah, so we had a lot of meetings. So I said I took over in August, and I kind of pre-planned my vacation. In January. I normally plan that far ahead, right? So I was actually away at the time we were doing most of the investor meetings. So the 5 a.m. to sort of 11 a.m. was in a room that I managed to secure to do this. So you've absolutely got to put the effort in. We were lucky that a lot of them were done remotely anyway. But the broker's a big part of it because they were introducing us to the right people. We had somebody else coming in at the end. We had somebody who came in appeared very genuine, and then literally the night before the raise pulled the rug out, and that really hit us on the share price that we had to raise at. So we took some heat because of the fact that we took such a discount on the raise. We didn't necessarily have to have taken that hit if disingenuous traders.
So what would you have done differently? What would you do differently?
So I would have had more confidence in myself to turn around and say no, and let's just wait and go back, because in the end we were oversubscribed. Yeah. So there was an appetite out.
I mean, every deal ends up oversubscribed.
Yeah, so, in principle, and you could argue it was oversubscribed because the price came down. Yeah. That's also true, but equally.
So going back to a really early point, back yourself in your decision making. And stick to the conviction and process, and not bullied into an outcome. But
so we weren't bullied. So in the I refused to acquiesce to the demands that were being made, and then that just basically led to an apparent withdrawal of the offer at that point, which yeah, it wasn't an ideal scenario, and it took me by surprise. So at that stage, it took me by surprise. Whereas it wouldn't, right? So we wouldn't even approach that individual again, and we just take.
And maybe another takeaway for people listening could be, when you're talking to investors, make sure you have the primary relationship and all of the information.
Yeah.
Because, things can change very suddenly if you don't, and that can put you in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Okay, so if anyone listening has resonated with something you've said, or they're in similar sector, maybe they're about to raise, maybe they're going through a tough spot with their investors, maybe they want to start internalizing some of their market-facing functions. Are you happy if they reach out to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm always happy to talk to people. I mean, that's key thing that I've always done is networking and sharing. You're not looking to get something back, something that you do a favor for somebody today, a couple of years later, it'll come back.
Share
What
stories.
goes around comes around, and everybody needs to benefit from it, right? Yeah, exactly. So I was into this from a very different scenario, and the advice and help that I've received has been great. So I'm very happy.
Let's pay it forward.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Thank you, Mark.
No worries.